Round 14 is kicking off this weekend. We've got a preview for all 7 matches coming your way this weekend in the AFL. This is the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome on in to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. We've got another episode for you today. It's episode 39. It's our round 14 preview. The AFL season is flying through. I cannot believe it's round 14 already. But today, we're going to be previewing all 7 games coming your way this week. There is obviously 4 buys, 4 teams having buys this weekend. So just the 7 matches to get through. We're going to be going through all the news, what we expect to happen. And hopefully, we will find you 7 winners that are coming your way this weekend. So yeah, that's basically the plan for this episode. If you're new around here, we do 2 podcast episodes every single week. We do one on every Monday, which reviews the round of football that happened over the weekend. And then on Thursday morning, our second one goes live, which is this episode. It's our preview episode for the upcoming round. So if you are new, make sure you subscribe/follow, depending what source you're listening to this through. Like the video, rate the podcast, comment, let me know who you think's going to win this weekend. All of that stuff, make sure you do it. Other than that, let's jump into the football. There's 7 games to get through. Probably won't be as long an episode as normal due to the fact that there's 7 games only this weekend. But first up is a Thursday night football, as each weekend starts. But this one is with St Kilda and the Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium. Thursday night football. Couple Marvel Stadium tenants going head-to-head on a Thursday night football. Bulldogs will be going into this pretty strong favourites. No doubt about it. I don't think there's too much surprise there based on what we've seen this year from both clubs. Not much difference in ladder positions between them. Bulldogs 9th, St Kilda 12th, so there's not too much difference there. I think the Bulldogs' best has certainly been a lot better than St Kilda's best, but it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out because Bulldogs were not great last weekend. Teams have been announced for this one. I'm recording this on Wednesday night. Obviously, this will go live Thursday morning, but teams have been announced in the last hour or so for me. Lining up for St Kilda, coming in are Jack McRae and Liam Stocker. Going out is Matthias Philippou and Hugh Boxall. Jack Sinclair playing his 200th game as well. Just a little side note there. And then on the other side of the fence, here's the big one though. Sam Darcy is back. After he went down, 10 weeks ago? Not even that long ago. And there was all these fears that was the end of his season. He is back in no time at all. So that is a massive in for this Bulldogs team and this Bulldogs forward line. I think it will make a massive difference. Obviously, he hasn't really played with Bont this year because he got injured the game that Bont returned. So it'll be interesting to see if that is a massive influence as well. Because I think adding that extra really gun midfield into this Bulldogs team that was maybe missing a few players early days, with Sam Darcy back, this could be huge. Cooper Hines is also coming in. Out goes Ryan Gardner and James Harms, who is a big out. He's been pretty important for the Bulldogs this year so far, James Harms. A look at the recent record for both teams. St Kilda, they're coming off the bye last week, so it's been 10, 11 days since their last game when they beat Melbourne by 28 points. Solid enough win, wasn't anything fancy, but they got the job done. That was in Alice Springs. Melbourne kicked really poorly that day, but St Kilda got the job done. That's all that matters. Before that, it was 3 losses in a row for the Saints. They lost to Gold Coast, they lost to West Coast, which was the bad one, and they also lost to Carlton by 15 points. Before that was probably their best game of the year when they beat Fremantle by 61 points at Marvel Stadium. For the Bulldogs, it's been a weird 5 weeks, I'd say. Really dominant against Port Adelaide 5 weeks ago. Solid loss against Gold Coast up in Darwin. Only by 10 points they lost by. And they were certainly in that game all the way to the final moments. They then smacked the bejeebies out of the Bombers, in all honesty. They absolutely destroyed the Bombers. Lost to the Cats at the Cattery, which is no bad loss, by 14 points, and then had their bye. Then last week they were a little bit disappointing, looked a little bit off the pace against Hawthorn. That can happen to a lot of teams coming out of the bye, so I personally think we just forget that one ever happened and just expect that they will be back to a much better performance this weekend. It's no excuse at the end of the day coming out of the bye. Some teams don't do well out of it, some do. Like Port Adelaide played really well last weekend out of the bye. This week St Kilda are coming out of the bye, so different teams react differently out of the bye, but I just feel like we do forgive that Bulldogs performance on the weekend. It was still against Hawthorn, who are a good team, and I think we just forget it and move on and plan this game as if that one hadn't really happened. I think you look at this game and how it's going to play out. The attacking style of the Bulldogs, when they're going forward, they are absolutely hard to stop, and that's going to be even more so now that Sam Darcy is back. He was the number one key forward in the competition through the first 6 weeks, and there's no reason to believe that he might take a little bit to get going. We'll wait and see. I don't expect that game 1 he's going to be out there taking 8 contested marks and kicking 4 goals, but he certainly gives them a presence and a target to aim for. So their attack is where they dominate the Bulldogs. Their attack is up there with the best in the competition. Was last year as well. Has been for multiple years. Have they turned it into great success? Not really. But they are really good attacking. Defensively, probably not as strong as their offense, but it's still pretty good. It's above the normal, above the average of the AFL in most statistical categories. So they're really good in around the ground, whereas St Kilda, their attack and defence is pretty much dead level. They're across the ground. They're pretty even sort of team. Unfortunately, that even team is all slightly below the AFL average, and that means that Bulldogs are probably the stronger team on paper and the stronger performing team across the season so far. So I think that's why we're kind of swaying towards the Bulldogs winning this game. Last 10 matches between these two teams have gone 6-4 in favour of the Bulldogs, and 4 of those last 5 have been all won by the Bulldogs. The only time St Kilda won was round 2, 2023, so a few games back they won by 51 points. Outside of that, it's all been doggies, and some of them have been quite strong wins. Like last year, earlier this year, sorry, they have already met. Bulldogs won by 70 points. I think that even might be when Sam Darcy got injured, if I think back to it correctly. I might be wrong, but I think that's right. 60 points they won by early last season, and then back in 2022 in round 18 they won by 30, and then 2021 they won by 111 points. So they have a really good record over the last few years to the Bulldogs. You look across their stats across the board basically, and you see mostly a dominant Bulldogs statistical categories. You've got kicks. St Kilda do have more kicks per game than Bulldogs, but pretty much every other stat almost goes in favour of Bulldogs. They get a lot more inside 50s. They look after the ball a lot better. They get more metres per game. They get they're both pretty strong in the contested possession side of things, pretty level in that, but clearances is where Bulldogs have been dominant, +5 per game, whereas St Kilda are slightly negative. St Kilda do have a high uncontested football game. They have a high kick to mark game, which is certainly one way of playing football. Will it work against the Bulldogs? It certainly didn't last time these two teams met. I think that day, that was at Marvel Stadium as well. St Kilda kicked away early, dominated in that first 10-15 minutes, looked like they were going to control the game, and then they went basically a quarter and a half with about 2 inside 50s. So Bulldogs' game just absolutely tore them apart, and I would imagine that's probably what we're going to see again, because this Bulldogs forward momentum, forward pressure, just always attacking style, probably St Kilda will find it hard to stop, I think. That's how I see it anyway. I think that's about all that we have to say about this game. I don't think it's going to be a cracker. It's certainly not the best Thursday night game we're going to get this year, I don't think. but you never know. It could live up to above expectations. I'm tipping Bulldogs will go into my full tips for the round at the end of this episode. But yeah, that's how I see this game. That's how I see who's going to win. Moving on to the next game for the weekend. This is our All Aussie Rules game of the round for round 14. It's Hawthorn Adelaide. This is down in Launceston at Utah's Stadium on Friday night. And this should be a cracker. Hawthorn 6th on the ladder. Adelaide flying 3rd on the ladder. At the moment, Hawthorn slight favourites. I'm surprised they're not more so favourites than they are. I think they actually were... Adelaide were favourites yesterday when I looked. So Hawthorn coming in a little bit. They're dominant at this ground. So I find it hard to see how they're not favourites, strong favourites at least, Hawthorn. I know Adelaide are playing really good football, but this will be a really big test for them. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So we'll have a look at it. Obviously, teams have not been announced at time of recording of this video, but we'll have a look at recent form of both teams. Hawthorn obviously won last week against the Bulldogs with a really strong win. Got themselves back in the winners list after 3 losses in a row. All 3 of those were against top 8 teams though. Collingwood, Brisbane, Gold Coast. So 3 really competitive teams that they did lose to. The Collingwood one they did lose quite convincingly, but they came back and beat the Bulldogs last week. So they're back on the winners list. They're going good again. I wouldn't be too stressed about their form at all. I mean, they've won 8 out of 13 games this year. So that's where Hawthorn sit at the moment. Adelaide on the other side of the fence are absolutely flying. They've won 4 of their last 5. Their only loss coming to a 10-point loss to Collingwood in Melbourne. Other than that, they've beaten Port Adelaide. They smashed West Coast. They smashed Sydney. And then they just got over the line against Brisbane last Friday night. So their 4-5 week stretch has been really strong. And I would expect that we will continue to see some really good football from them over the coming weeks, because they are playing some of the best football in the competition right now. Their attacking style really looks good when it's on. It obviously was a low-scoring game last weekend, but don't worry too much about that. We look at the head-to-head record. It's heavily at Hawthorn's favour, which is a little strange because Hawthorn have obviously had some bad years, but I mean Adelaide haven't had a great run over the last 5-6 years either. But 7-3 in favour of the Hawks. They've won both times last year, quite convincingly. Certainly the second time they played. It just looks a lot like Hawthorn win this game, I think, on paper. Offensively wise, Adelaide are a dominant team. Potentially one of the best, if not the best attacking team in the competition this year so far. So that's where they're going to be. This game's going to be won or lost for them, I think, in their forward line. Likewise, Hawthorn, their defence is probably slightly stronger than their offence so far this year. So I think we'll see that as a really good matchup. The attack of Adelaide against the defence of Hawthorn. They've got a very strong backline at Hawthorn. It will be a fascinating matchup to see how that plays out. Whether one team has the favour over the other in that regard. I think based on where the game is at, we've just got to look at Hawthorn being the favourites in this one. Stat-wise, I don't think there's too much of a massive discrepancy between the two teams. Adelaide, as I said, their attack is really good. Both teams lose clearances, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out on the weekend. Hawthorn minus 3.4 per game. Adelaide minus 1 per game, basically. Neither massively high marking games, team games. Disposal numbers pretty similar. Inside 50 numbers pretty similar. Disposal efficiency is the massive thing. Hawthorn way above Adelaide in that regard, but across the board, the numbers do weigh up pretty similar for both teams. I think it'll be interesting to see. Basically, which whether Adelaide's forward line gets on top of Hawthorn's back line. Hawthorn have the back line that can probably handle the Adelaide forward line the best of any team, because Adelaide have that dominant 3 tall, 3 small forward line, which really has been paying dividends for them all year. Hawthorn do have some really good tall defenders, but also smaller defenders as well. So I think that is going to be hugely beneficial for the Hawks here. And they might be the perfect counter, I guess, to take on this Adelaide attack. Midfield battle will also be interesting. Obviously, Jordan Dawson's flying this year. Many people have him on top for the Brownlow this year, including us here at All Aussie Rules. Rankin in there. Saligo's having a great year. So Adelaide midfield's going really well. Hawthorn midfield also at times is really good. I think Lloyd Meek shapes up to have a really, really good game here. In this one, I think he will have an absolute blinder. Jai Newcomb's having a great season. So from all of that, I think we're just siding towards Hawthorn winning just due to mainly where the game is at Utah Stadium, and the fact that I think their defense just matches up well against this Adelaide Crows team. We'll see if that is how it plays out. It's going to be an important game for both teams' seasons, and what happens here will have, I think, ramifications for the rest of the season for both teams. But that's how we see it. That's the game of the round. That's the one you want to watch. Friday night footy should be a ripper this weekend. I'll be at this game. I'm looking forward to it. It should be a good game. Two teams vying for top 4 spots this season. Both potentially could still finish top 4 quite easily. So we'll see how this game plays out on Friday night. We moved to Saturday football a few weeks back, 5 or 6 weeks back. This game probably was looking like it could be game of the round. Not sitting that way currently. It's not to say it's not looking like an okay game, but just some weird sort of form between both teams. Brisbane, heavy favourites in this, sitting second on the ladder. GWS currently 7th on the ladder. Outsiders here, because it is at the Gabba, home game for the Lions. Yeah, I don't know what to say about this game really, because both teams not in the greatest form. So Brisbane over the last 5 weeks, 2 wins, 2 losses and a draw. GWS are 3 wins and 2 losses, which is surprising that they're that good. But when you look at the quality of the teams they've been playing, perhaps they should have been a little bit better than that. So Brisbane, their last 5 weeks, a draw to North Melbourne was the disappointing one down in Hobart. They then lost to Melbourne at the Gabba, which was a really disappointing result for them. They then managed to beat Hawthorn in Melbourne and things looked rosy again. It was a great performance. Followed that up with a little bit of a shaky win, I guess, over Essendon before going down to Adelaide in a game where they, by many accounts, probably should have won that game. In my eyes, they should have. They wasted opportunities in front of goal, and that was, the difference in the game in the end. They only lost by 5 points. So they've had a weird sort of 5 weeks, and I'm not 100% sure where they are. I still think they're a really good team. Their main issue is that forward efficiency. They go forward a lot throughout games, but just turning it into scores is not what is going great for them at the present time. On the other side of the fence, GWS, as I said, they're 3-2 over the 5 weeks, so it's not terrible. They're still 7th on the ladder. They're 7-6 for the year. But the thing is, they had 5 weeks ago a really, really good win down in Geelong against Geelong by 4 points. And at that point, we were thinking they are on for a really big season. They've got themselves back into form. But they followed that up with a home loss to Fremantle by 34 points. Really bad result, that one. Then they got the 30-point win against Carlton in Melbourne, and it was like, okay, they're still okay. They then played atrociously bad against Richmond, down by 28 points at three-quarter time. Should have been probably 50 points down at three-quarter time if Richmond had have converted their opportunities a bit better. End up coming back in that last quarter, winning by 3 points, but it's really not a great performance, that one. And then last week against Port Adelaide, coming off the bye, they lost by 16 points and did not look good at all at any point of that game. And that was at Manuka Oval as well, so home game for GWS. So their form is scratchy at best, but you could say the same about Brisbane. So it's mid-season. It's not the end of the world if you're shaky at this point, but you do need to find your form again. And going up against Brisbane at the Gabba, is a tough game. There's no doubt about it. We move to have a look at the record between these two teams. Brisbane do have the better record head-to-head. 7-3 over the last 10. I think everyone probably remembers the semi-final from last year when GWS were, 42, 41, somewhere around there, points up in the third quarter before Brisbane came flying home out of nowhere and won that game. The two previous times last year that they met, GWS won them both. So, recent form, GWS have an okay record against Brisbane, but before that it was 5 in a row for the Lions. So, I'm interested to see how this one plays out, because I think across the year as a whole, I think Brisbane have been the better team of these two. Their attack is solid. It could be a lot better. Like, the numbers that they get going forward is really good. They just have a slight issue where they aren't converting. It was a similar issue this time last year. They did kind of correct it in the back half of the year last year. Whether they can do that again, we'll see. Their defense has been really strong, though, this year, and that's probably what's holding them up on second on the ladder at the moment, is how strong their defense has been. It's been really good. Most of the numbers read as it being very good. Certainly makes up for the fact that their offense hasn't been quite as spectacular as perhaps we would hope. GWS on the other side, their numbers aren't great this year. You take out opening round and their numbers are really quite poor. Attacking wise they're below average, and defence wise they're even worse. So over the last few weeks it's been a little bit of a horror show. If we go back to this kind of point last year, I was thinking very similar things about GWS, and they came good. So ended up finishing top 4. Did get skittled out in straight sets. So there was that, but I wouldn't be writing them off. But they definitely do need to find some better form than they're showing right now across the remainder of the season. Is this the week that it starts getting better for them? Maybe. It's not going to be an easy one, but potentially. I think Brisbane will definitely have the forward chances in this game. They'll probably dominate. They almost certainly will dominate clearances and inside 50s in this game. They do most weeks, and GWS, they're two of GWS's weakest parts of their game. The thing that GWS do really well is when they're moving the ball through the middle of the ground in a wave, the tsunami as they used to call it, probably still do call it, they look really good, and that's how they damage you. They rebound and they do really well. They have the highest rebound 50 rate, I think, in the competition. Very close if they're not number one. And that's what they do. They don't let you score. So these two teams match up fascinatingly in that regard. To see how that will shape up, I guess, in that Brisbane's efficiency in their forward line is not great, and GWS's back line is their strongest part, as in terms of stopping teams from scoring once it goes in 50. So I think we'll see a very fascinating matchup there. I think that will shape this game, and I think Brisbane win it, mainly because it's at the Gabba, but I still think their form is slightly better than GWS's. Certainly their wins have been better than what the recent GWS wins have been, in my opinion. So yeah, that's pretty much everything from that game. We move on to the next one. Saturday evening game. We've got Essendon Geelong at the MCG, 4:15 start. No surprise that Geelong are going to be starting heavy favourites in this. They'll be very, very heavy favourites going into this game. I don't think there's any doubt about that. We look at some of the numbers of this one. We've got obviously Essendon sitting 10th on the ladder, 6-6. So pretty solid season, probably better than what a lot of people expected, especially when you consider the amount of injuries they've had this year. Geelong 4th on the ladder, 9 wins, 4 losses, and they've won their last 4 games. They're flying. Their last loss was 5 weeks ago against GWS by 4 points. Before that, they beat top of the ladder Collingwood. So they're flying. They then beat Port Adelaide by a mile over in Adelaide. They then beat Bulldogs down at the Cattery. Took care of West Coast over in the West. And then last week, they beat Gold Coast in a scrappy, tight, wet game down at the Cattery by 24 points, which was a solid performance. You move on to the Bombers. Their form has been better than it probably reads. They're only 2 wins out of their last 5. They've only had one really bad game in that. They beat the Swans 5 weeks ago. Their bad game was their loss against Bulldogs. They were never in that contest. They got absolutely smacked. Then they beat Richmond, which, Richmond is a low-ranked team, so they should be winning that, but they did win it. They then were really competitive against Brisbane after a really bad first quarter. They came good and fought their way back into that contest and only ended up losing by 18 points. And certainly, I think they hit the front by a point at one point, so they had a chance. And then on last weekend, Sunday night, they played Carlton. And once again, really slow start with 5 goals down in the first quarter. They fought their way back, only lost by 8 points in the end. But they certainly got themselves back into that game. Last 2 weeks, they've kicked really straight, and that's probably been the difference between getting smacked and not. But at the same time, they're giving themselves a shot. They're playing some good football, and they're certainly not in the worst form of any team in the competition. They're playing pretty solid without being spectacular, but they do have a lot of injuries, so you kind of forgive a lot of that. We look at the head-to-head record. Geelong absolutely dominate this matchup. 8 out of the last 10, no surprise. Geelong have been up and about towards the top of the ladder for most of those years, whereas Essendon have only had a couple little runs here and there. They met once last year. Geelong won it by 45 points. They met twice in 2023, and they won them both. One quite comfortably. The other one was a little bit closer. 2022, they met once, and Geelong won it easily. So you got to go right back to 2018 for the last time the Bombers beat the Cats. That doesn't read great here for the Bombers. You look at the game styles of both teams. Bombers' defence is probably better than their offence, but overall, they're certainly below the AFL average. Whereas Geelong, their attack is their best part of their game. They're well above average on that, and their defence is slightly above average. So overall, the numbers suggest that Geelong across the ground are the better team here. Stats-wise, what are we expecting to see in this game? I would say you're probably seeing clearance game going the way of the Bombers, but the turnover game, intercept game being dominated by Geelong, I think. And that's dangerous because when Geelong are dominating the turnover game, they're almost impossible to stop. The way they transition from turning the ball over, getting that intercept, and bursting forward is absolutely what destroys a lot of teams. These two teams did meet in pre-season, and Essendon did win it, but you kind of forget about pre-season form, let's be fair. Other than that, I think it's hard to read on a way for Essendon to win this, just on sheer form and I guess talent across the field. It has to look like Geelong win this. I don't think it will be an 80-point flogging, but I wouldn't be surprised to see anywhere from 30 to 60 points as the final margin. The thing is, once Geelong sniff blood, they can absolutely punish teams and bury them. So there's always that chance every week that Geelong plays that they could absolutely bury a team. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't know if there's too much else to say about this game, really. It's basically, Geelong on paper look like the winner. Across the board, look like they're probably the winner in this one. So I think that's where we'll leave this match and head on to the Saturday night fixture, which I'm not happy about. Let's be honest, this is the worst Saturday night fixture of all time. If you're not a KO or Foxtel subscriber, this game here would not be one that would suggest, promote you to watch this, to get the pay the KO fee, because my goodness, North Melbourne Fremantle Saturday night at Optus Stadium. This shapes up as an absolute stinker. North Melbourne coming off what I believe is one of the all-time worst performances you'll see. I know they won the game against West Coast, but boy was that bad. Against Fremantle at home, coming off the bye. Oh, pardon me, coming off the bye. You've got to imagine that this is just an absolute domination by Fremantle. North have sold their home game to Fremantle for this one, so they're playing at Optus Stadium, and it's hard to see a world where North are even slightly competitive based on what we saw from them last week. I know that's not their week, that's not how they've been every week, but wow, it was bad. Recent form of both teams absolutely reads okay for Kangaroos. They're 2 wins, 2 losses and a draw from their last 5. 5 games ago, lost to Essendon by 3 points. Were pretty solid in that. Then they drew with Brisbane. Really great performance. Won by 4 points over Richmond in not a great performance. Competitive with Collingwood for 3 quarters, but ended up getting smacked by 45 points, mainly in that last quarter. And then last week, they ended up beating West Coast by 10 points, but it was not pretty. It was not a great performance, and in all honesty, it was a shocking game. Both teams were bad, but I felt like they should have been probably 5 goals down at 3/4 time. Luckily for them, it was only a couple, and they managed to turn it around and end up winning by 10 points. But it was not great performance from them. I don't think anyone would argue that it was. On the other side of the fence, we've got Fremantle. They obviously had the bye last week, but they're 3-2 from their last 5 matches. 5 weeks ago, things were looking quite bad for Fremantle. They lost to St Kilda by 61 points. They followed that up with a 14-point loss at home to Collingwood. But then all of a sudden, the very next week, it turned instantly. They beat GWS by 34 points over in Sydney. Smacked Port Adelaide in the rain by 49 points. Beat Gold Coast up on the Gold Coast by 11 points, which is an absolutely massively good win. Don't underestimate how important that win was for them this season, because it put them into the bye at 7-5. If they had have lost that one, they would have been going into the bye at 6-6. So it is huge for them. It's an important one for them, and all of a sudden it just gave them some really good momentum into that bye. They come out of it straight away and play North Melbourne, which is huge for them. I think they also have a couple more games at Optus Stadium in a row, maybe. Could be completely wrong there. But they have a really big chance to make a really good push going forward. If you haven't already, go check out the mid-season review episode of the Fremantle Dockers. It went live last week onto the channel. If you're a North supporter, go check out the North Melbourne mid-season review. I think that's up there too. But yeah, that's basically... on the YouTube channel. Go check them out. We're doing mid-season reviews for every team as they get to their bye. Sorry, my mind just decided to stop there for a second. But yeah, Fremantle will be heavy favourites, and rightly so. Offensively, they're about AFL average, Fremantle, but their defence is really strong. Meanwhile, North Melbourne's attack has been pretty poor overall, but their defence has been even worse. So that's going to be their issue here. How do they score on this Fremantle team? But how do they also stop this Fremantle team? They're not the most attacking team, Fremantle, but they have also been known to put the pedal down when they get the opportunity. So we'll see how that plays out. Last 10 matches between these two teams, 7-3 in favour of Fremantle. They had the upset win, North Melbourne, 2 years ago, 2023 round 2. By 1 point, North Melbourne over Freo. But outside of that, 5 of the other 5 of the last 6 have all been won by Fremantle. Pretty convincingly on almost all occasions, averaging over 100 points for Fremantle in those games, whereas North Melbourne averaging probably around about 50 odd. So quite convincing numbers in favour of Fremantle there. This is one of 2 games at Optus Stadium this weekend as well, which you don't see too often, 2 games at Optus Stadium in the one weekend. Numbers-wise, North will have plenty of the ball. They always do. it's the way they play football, uncontested football. They're pretty good in the contest, though, as well. They usually do well contested football and clearance game, and they convert that into then uncontested football. The issue is going to come, though, at getting the ball actually into positive positions, because that is where they struggle quite a lot, I think, is turning their possessions into good positions going forward. They tend to turn it over a lot before they get it inside 50, and that will be an issue here against Fremantle. There's no doubt about it. It's been their issue probably all season long. Slow build-up, controlling the ball. They like to play a lot of heavy contested football game as well. I know that kind of contradicts the uncontested footy, but they love to have it as multiple ball ups, multiple stoppages, and that, I don't know if that plays into their hands at all, to be honest. It's how they play a lot of football, though, and it's why they have probably so many hit-outs, so many those sort of numbers, but it's, going to play out, I think, just in Fremantle's favour across the board. They don't care about disposal numbers, whereas there seems to be some North Melbourne players that maybe do. That's everything from that game. We'll jump into Sunday football. There's only 2 more games to look at for the round. We've got in this one Port Adelaide Melbourne. It's at Adelaide Oval on Sunday, 3:20 p.m. Eastern kickoff, so through 2:50 Adelaide time. Port Adelaide going to be starting favourites. There's not a huge amount of teams that they start favourites to at the moment because they're not playing great football, but Melbourne is one, and it is a home game for them. And they have also maybe turned their form around this season. We'll see. So as I said, Sunday night, 15th versus 14th on the ladder. 5 and 7 Port Adelaide, 5 and 8 Melbourne. Obviously, Melbourne have played that extra game. Port Adelaide coming off the bye the week before last. They went into the bye 4 losses in a row, smacked by the Bulldogs, beaten by the Crows in the showdown, smacked by Geelong, smacked by Fremantle. Went into the bye, things were looking pretty bad for Port Adelaide at that point. But then they came out of the bye, went to Manuka Oval and beat GWS by 16 points in a really good performance. And in all honesty, they looked the better team out there than GWS. So a really good win out of the bye all of a sudden just gives them a sniff. They've got a lot of ground to catch up on at 5 and 7. Because you're going to need, 13 wins probably to play finals. So they need to win 8 out of their last 11 games. 11 games, yeah. 8 out of 11 they would need to win. That's not going to be easy. No doubt about it. That's going to be really tough. It's not impossible, though, so maybe there's just a sniff for them. Meanwhile, Melbourne, their last couple losses may have almost extinguished their chances. They'd got themselves back into an okay spot after a really slow start to the season. They got to, 5? They lost their first 5. They got themselves back to 5 and 6 with wins against Brisbane and then Sydney, the last 2 grand finalists. But then the last 2 weeks, losing to St Kilda was the bad one, lost by 28 points, and then just a couple of days ago lost to Collingwood by a point, which puts them to 5 and 8, and they would need to win 8 out of 10 to make finals, which is not going to be an easy task. It's probably a little bit too much to ask from them from this point, I think. A look at some of the numbers. 5 and 5 head-to-head record over the last 10. Port Adelaide won 2 of the last 3 over the last 2 years. Overall, it's a pretty even matchup across the board, in all honesty. Last year, they met twice. They were both close games. Port Adelaide won by 2 points in round 22, and in round 3, Melbourne won by 7 points, which, funnily enough, if I remember correctly, the away team won both of those. So that's just an interesting stat. You look at the numbers where both of these teams are strong and not. Both of them, probably their defense is better than their offense. if you look at the numbers, Melbourne's numbers actually suggest that they're the better team out of these two so far this year. And I think that's mainly because Port Adelaide have had some good games, but they've had some absolute stinkers. They've had multiple games where they've lost by 15 goals or close to. Whereas you just can't have that if you're a competitive team too often. And Melbourne haven't had that so much, so their numbers probably read slightly better than Port Adelaide's across the season. But if you look at recency last week, Melbourne weren't bad. Port Adelaide were good though, so you kind of think about that. Contested footy is Melbourne's bread and butter. Their clearance game is their bread and butter. And it's not for Port Adelaide. Both of those areas Port Adelaide are very weak in. So that's probably where this game's going to be very important, I think, is in the contest out of the clearances. If Melbourne can control them and control the ground, I think you'll see a really, really tough battle for Port Adelaide, who so far this year have not defended Adelaide Oval that well. They've had some bad games at Adelaide Oval. So I just think I'm going to be tipping Port Adelaide, I think. We'll get to my tips shortly. But I would not be surprised to see Melbourne win this, in all honesty. Their bye's coming up in a couple of weeks. Maybe this is one that upset. This could be the upset of the round, maybe. It's not massive difference in odds, but I just see a world where Melbourne could win this. I'll probably be tipping Port Adelaide, I think, but I'm not going to be surprised to see Melbourne win at all. Move on to the final game of the round, and to be honest, it's another stinker. There's a couple of them this weekend, and it's kind of disappointing, but that is the way it is. You can't do anything about that. So it's West Coast Carlton, Sunday evening, Optus Stadium. We'll be sitting up watching this, waiting for it to finish, so that we can record the podcast episode Sunday night. And yeah, look, most of the time, this would be a tough watch, and I would imagine it will be again. Carlton getting to play West Coast for the second time this year, is that correct? Yeah, they met in round 5, so second time these two teams have met this year. Obviously the last one was not over in WA, and it was that gather round. It was, so Carlton won gather round by like 70 odd points. They meet again 9 weeks later, and let's be honest, we're probably going to see another demolition job from Carlton, because that's what they do. They smack the living daylights out of bottom ranked teams, and I would be surprised to see that not happen here. West Coast 18th on the ladder, 1 win, 12 losses. Carlton 11th on the ladder, 5 wins, 7 losses. Carlton's season has a glimmer. I'm telling you, it has a glimmer. They got their win last week against the Bombers coming out of the bye. They beat the Bombers. Huge win for them. It was only by 8 points, but it was a very important win. They now play West Coast. Next week's a winnable game for them, a very winnable game as well. So all of a sudden they win 3 in a row out of the bye, and they're going to be back to 7-7 with 9 games to go, needing probably 6 out of their last 9 to play finals. It's got a pulse for the Blue Baggers. If you're a Blues fan, you have to believe you have a pulse. It's not over yet. Long way to go, but they've got a pulse. So they've won 2 out of their last 5, so it's not the best form. 60-point loss to Adelaide. Adelaide are a very good team. They beat St Kilda at the MCG. Lost to Sydney, up in Sydney. Then lost to GWS in Melbourne before the bye. And then obviously out of the bye, they had a really good performance, beating the Bombers by 8 points. Looked like it was going to be a dominant game. They were 5 goals up in the first quarter. Bombers brought them back. But overall, they got the 4 points, and maybe there's a chance. West Coast, it's been a rough season. They've won 1 game. That was 4 weeks ago against St Kilda. Since then, they got smacked by Adelaide, who are a top team. They got smacked by Geelong, who are a top team. Last week, though, they lost to North Melbourne over in the West. Wasn't a West Coast home game, and it wasn't at West Coast home ground. It was at Hands Oval. But my goodness, they should have won it 6-16. I think they were like 1 goal 12 or something ridiculous at one point. It was not a good day for the Eagles, and it kind of sums up where they're at this year. I think they're just off the pace. Maybe they can turn it around. Like that St Kilda win was a decent enough performance. They have had a couple decent performances this year, but I just have concerns where they're growing at the moment because they're not showing a lot. We look at head-to-head record. It's 5-5 over the last 10. However, that was 5 in a row for West Coast, followed by 5 in a row for Carlton. I fully expect that Carlton will extend that. Their last few have all been quite dominant wins as well. You look at the last 5 times these two teams have met. Carlton have scored 116, 152, 140, 99 and 121. This could be a big score coming your way this weekend. So Carlton scoring really well. You go the other side of the fence the last 5 games. West Coast have scored 53, 44, 69, 34 and 50. This could be rough. I know it's in the West, which maybe helps West Coast a little bit here, but it's hard to see a world where they're going to be competitive. They're missing too many players. They don't have enough class. Attacking-wise, Carlton's offense this year is their weak point. Last year, their offense was really good and their defense just couldn't stop oppositions from scoring. They've basically just flipped it. This year, their offense is not scoring enough and their defense is doing really well and keeping them in games. But that is their biggest issue. But how this West Coast team scores on this Carlton team, I don't see a world where they get over 65. And I also don't see a way where this West Coast defence can hold back Carlton's from forward line from scoring 100 plus. In all honesty, this is what Carlton do best. They destroy teams like this. So I fully expect them to go out there and dominate pretty much every stat in the game. They will dominate clearances. They will absolutely destroy them in contested football. Inside 50 count will be massively in Carlton's favour. They'll have all of the football. They'll tackle harder. They'll score more goals. And Carlton will win this game. I don't usually do big calls like that, but that's absolute. It's not that big of a call. It's not outrageous, but I don't usually declare stuff on the podcast. But my goodness, it's hard to see that not happening. We'll move into my tips, and then we'll be wrapping up this episode. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you're new here. Make sure you head over to the YouTube channel. Check out the mid-season reviews. There's multiple going out every single week as each team gets to the bye. Collingwood went out yesterday or the day before, depending when you're watching this. Over this weekend, there is 3 more to come out. So they're the other 3 bye teams for this round. That's Gold Coast, Sydney and Richmond. So Gold Coast is going on Friday, Sydney on Saturday, Richmond on Sunday. So plenty of content over on the YouTube channel. Go check it all out. Don't forget to check out the social medias as well. Instagram has my team of the week each week go live. As it also has my rookie report each week, so my Rising Star Award, which at the moment is led by Archie Roberts from Essendon. We also have TikTok. We do little 1-minute reviews of every single game. We also talk about key things that are happening over the weekend. So go check out all my social medias. It's all Aussie Rules everywhere, so you should be able to find it. Just type in all Aussie Rules. Let's jump into my tips for this weekend. It's round 14. We're 73 out of 113 for the year, so not great. My actual tippings, I think 5 above that on 78, because sometimes I do change them from when, obviously, I record this on Wednesday. So these are my Wednesday tips. Things might change before the games start. But we got Bulldogs to win on Thursday night. They should be too good for St Kilda. They beat them comfortably earlier this season. I know they weren't great last week, but I fully expect them to bounce back this week. Hawthorn down at Utah Stadium, I can't tip against them. I just can't do it. Not down there. They're too strong in Launceston. And for that reason, we've got them by 8 points. Then we got Brisbane to beat GWS by 21 points at the Gabba. Brisbane should be too strong. Geelong should be too strong for Essendon based on what we've seen this year. I've got them by 35 points. Fremantle play North Melbourne, and this should be comfortable Fremantle win. 42 points might be an understatement. North do occasionally play some okay football, but we did not see that from them last week. But maybe we'll get better from them this week. Port Adelaide by 15 points over Melbourne, but as I said, this is the one that I'm probably most cautious about this weekend, because Melbourne could, at their best, could beat Port Adelaide here, and Port Adelaide have shown some really bad signs throughout the year at certain points. Final game of the round is Carlton West Coast. I've got Carlton by 39, but this is one that could be 139. It could also be close. I doubt it though. I think Carlton win this one comfortably. Should be too strong for West Coast. Even though it's at Optus Stadium and Carlton are not playing the best football this season, I just don't see a world where they're competitive enough. That's basically the long, the short of this weekend's football. Round 14 coming your way. Don't forget to come back and check out our Round 14 review episode going live on all these same platforms on Monday next week. I thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Make sure you jump down in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of it. Big weekend of football. Go check out my socials. Hope your team wins this weekend if they're playing. If they're not, enjoy the football. We'll catch you next week.